We're gonna do another live tonight. Uh, Hopefully you can hear me. I can't check Facebook. Nobody on it yet. So you can hear me over here on TikTok, though, right? Give me some hearts, please. Cool. Awesome. You hear me over here on YouTube. I think you got through this one here. All right, guys. So I've been doing a lot of podcasts. I think that pod match was money well spent, $60, and it's already resulted in seven podcasts in less than a week. So, that's good. It's good, but we need the numbers up. We got to figure out a way to break through. That's our challenge right now is being heard. And as soon as we're heard, we're going to see the dynamics change. They're going to change dramatically. Um, again, we can look at history and we can see, how this works. And when we were dealing with Plessy versus Ferguson and the segregation in the South, that was a decision that was made by the Wake Court, same court that we're dealing with today, same group of men that felt as though it was acceptable to say that blacks aren't people and therefore not protected by the provisions of the guarantees Constitution. We're dealing with the same people and the same decisions that were made that they made her Todd versus California, along with Plessy versus Ferguson and all the rest. This was a group of slave owners that had a desire to proliferate their industry, and a lot of people don't like talking or don't like talking about slavery because they want to refer to chattel slavery. They want to refer to slavery as it used to be, but we can't separate current times from that institution. We can't. Um, and the truth lies right within our laws, guys. It's right in front of our face. You know, if you want to create a law that says you can't have slavery, then you would create a law that says you can't have slavery. You would not create a law that says that you can't have slavery except as a punishment for crime. Because if you say except, it means that you can have slavery, but it has to be a punishment for crime. So, we did not abolish the institution. We didn't do it. It's not, that is why we have mass incarceration. That's the driver behind it. We've been through these a few times, and you guys know that how I am with the military, and if you don't know your enemy, then you are going to be defeated. We have not overcame this enemy because we never understood it, because we keep on thinking that it's something that it's not. And so we start out with the Revolutionary War. All men are equal. Great. That's a wonderful philosophy to add. That's admirable, right? This is a country unlike any other because all men are going to be equal and the law is going to apply to all people equally. What a great philosophy. What a great principle to build your nation upon. But again, we got to look and we got to see, did our founding fathers actually do what they said that they believed in? The answer is no, guys. You see, they say that there's two different types of fools in the world. There's those that choose to believe in something that isn't real, and there's those that refuse to believe in what is real. And we have a lot of fools living in this country, man. I used to be the first kind of fool because I believed in the American principles. I believed what George Washington said. I believed what Thomas Jefferson said and James Madison. I believed in the words that they said because they are inspirational. They're revolutionary, right? All men are equal. Laws are going to apply equally. We're going to have a fair process, and innocents won't suffer, and all these things that America was founded upon. And I bought into it. I believed in something that was not real. But again, I got to tell you guys that there's a difference between theory and application, and you don't know application until you're face to face with it. And so we've got half a society out here that says, "Oh yeah, we've got the greatest criminal justice system in the world," right? It's built upon all these just principles and equality and fairness and equal application and all these things. We believe that we have that, but the only question we got to ask ourselves is whether or not what we preach consistent with what we practice. And it's not. It's not. And that's why we have another set of fools. out here because they can't believe in something that they've never had. These families have been born into this institution for thousands of years. They've been enslaved for thousands of years. Once you're enslaved, you can't overcome your slave owner. You know, I was talking with some people yesterday, and they were saying we were talking about the two main things that's removed from you when you're oppressed, right? When you're labeled a felon, they take away your right to bear arms, and they take away your right to vote. Guys, those weren't arbitrary. Those weren't by chance. Those were designed to be a very specific for a very specific purpose. Because if you want to rise up against your oppressors, there's only two ways that you can do it. One is democratically, and the other is militarily. But if you take away a person's right to vote, then they have no ability to rise up democratically. If you take away a person's right to bear arms, they can't rise up militarily. And so those two things are taken not because it's in the best interest of society, but so that we can keep the oppressed in a state of oppression because we've taken away the two things that they need to be able to overcome their oppressors. And that's the true reality of the system. That's what we're dealing with out here. We are dealing with a system that has a desire to proliferate its business. And why is that? Because our founders and forefathers didn't create a criminal justice system, man. They created a criminal enslavement system because the system is not built upon the just principles of all men being equal, of laws applying to all men equally. It's built upon the enslavement of people because justice is and has always been simply a term that was created by slave owners in order to preserve and protect their property. We don't have a criminal justice system. We have a criminal enslavement system because slavery is the foundation of the system. That's the business that they run. So, you guys, I always want us to look at words and actions. I keep on telling you guys, you got to look at words and actions. Those two things have got to align. If they don't align, then this person's a liar. So I can say that I'm honorable. I can go tell everybody that I'm honorable. But if my actions are not honorable, then I'm not honorable. I can say it all day long. But if my actions show something different, I'm a liar. I'm not being truthful. Right? And so, when we look at the founding fathers of this country and we consider what they did, we had founders that believed in something revolutionary, amazing, right? Inspirational, that we all believe in today, that all men are equal, that the laws apply equally to all persons, that here in America, innocence doesn't suffer because you have a fair and neutral proceeding, that you're able to defend yourself, and that the state has to prove that you're guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Those are all the things we believe in and that we say. But when it comes right down to it, the actions are inconsistent with the words because we're not doing what the words say. If we say that we're going to do something, if we say that we're going to have an indictment by a grand jury, then damn it, we have to do it. Otherwise, we're liars. We're breaking the law. So, our founders, they have led us in this direction, right? I have great admiration for these men, but they failed us, man. They failed us because, again, we're just simply following our leaders. We're doing what our leaders have told us to do, what they've done for 240 years. And when our founding fathers, when the founders of our nation, when they said that they believed in the equality of all men, they believed in the equal application of laws to all men, and then when it came right down to it, they didn't make all men equal, and thus they did not apply the law equally to all men. Now you have two different groups of people that live here in society. You have one where the law serves them. They're the free people, right? They're the ones that don't even realize that there's any problems. They're the ones that are drinking the Kool-Aid. That's where I came from. The law is under them. It's there to serve them. It's their weapon to keep them free. So all these people over here. But then we have a whole nother set of people over here. They're actually ruled over by the law. They're enslaved by the law. The law rules over them. They're not free because the laws don't apply equally to them. When you're enslaved here in America, the laws don't apply equally to you, right? When you're enslaved or when you're accused of being enslaved, then the system doesn't apply the laws equally. They'll apply it to the accuser because that's the one that carries the debt, but then they won't apply it equally to the one that's been accused. Why? Because it's a business, guys. It's a business. And that's what our founders and forefathers showed us. We're simply following them. We're doing what we were taught 243 years ago. We're doing what George Washington led us to do. Because when George Washington was at the fork in the road, and he had an opportunity to actually create a criminal justice system built upon just principles of all men being equal, the laws applying equally to all men, he decided to keep his property and not release all men and make all men equal. And instead, he kept his slaves. That's not consistent with the words. And Mr. Washington was a liar. So when I go into like the Washington Monument, and I go up to the top of it and I come off the elevator, and the first thing I see is this great big sign that says that, this monument is dedicated to the greatest human character ever known to mankind. I have to scratch my head and say, the fuck where did this, like, we don't even see this because we are so stuck on these words. We're so stuck on these principles because they are great principles. They're amazing principles. And I think that we could achieve them. But the only way that we are going to achieve them is by making all men equal. Finally, we have to start this country over, because we don't, then we're going to continue. We're going to continue down this path. There's going to be two different worlds. There's going to be a world where it's arbitrary and capricious, governed by judges, where you're not free, where crime exists and poverty exists, and all of these issues exist, and they're in conflict with all the people over here that are just happy-go-lucky to have no idea that there's even anything wrong, because they've never experienced the true reality of the system. They're kept in this state of euphoria because they're out earning money and getting by with status quo and mediocrity and happy with that. And so what I'm trying to do, you guys, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create something big enough that we can talk about these issues. Because the only way that we're going to solve these problems is to talk about them. That's what makes America great, is our ability to communicate, to debate an issue, to come up with a solution. I can't do this on my own, right? I can propose the issue, I can present the issue, and then let the people talk about it and debate it. And just like Tim said the other day on the podcast. I mean, he's like, well, I don't see any situation in which the government would overturn and reverse all these convictions. Well, you need to see it, because if you don't, then we are going to be continuing to act unconstitutionally. You see, this is an all or nothing situation that we're in here. Either we reverse all of the unconstitutional judgments, because that's what has to happen. You can't keep any conviction that was obtained unconstitutional. You can't keep them valid, or else you're just going to have this shit continue on. No, if there's an unconstitutional judgment, it has to be removed. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter what they did. It doesn't matter, none of that matters. What matters is, did we follow the rules? And if we didn't, it was unconstitutional. And so to say that, well, I don't know any situation which government would make this decision. Well, it's not up to the government, guys. This is a discussion that I just had just an hour ago on the drive here. Is that I have sat and I've talked with tens of thousands of attorneys about this. Tens of thousands. I've talked with probably thousands of judges about this. Every single one of them say that I'm right. Every single one of them has said that I'm right. But they all say that this will never happen. It's too big of a deal, right? Or they don't bite the hand that feeds us, so they're not going to get my help, or I'm not going to get their help. And my issue with that is that the people didn't do this, right? The people are suffering as a result of what's been done, but the people didn't cause this. So the very people that are saying right now, oh, this is too big of a deal, we can't do this because it's been this way for so long, or we've done it so many times this way. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. You got us into this mess. You did this. And so to say that, oh, well, this is just the way it's done now, it's too big of a deal to change now, I'm going to say, no, I'm going to raise the bullshit flag and say, no, you did this, government. This was your fault. You can't continue to oppress the people and hurt the people because of your fucking ignorance. You guys should have went the right direction. Or you guys should have long time ago held your predecessors accountable for the bullshit that they put into place. Because when the Marshall Court came in and put precedents in place and said we're going to now follow stare decisis and precedents, that's not valid. Precedence has no place within American jurisprudence. It has a place within English common law, but not American common law. Because here in America, the Constitution is supposed to be foundation and everything's supposed to derive from it. Judges are tethered to positive law, right? Therefore, their rulings must be consistent with the law. They don't have the right to change the law. They don't have the right to create a ruling and say, okay, well, this is how law is, this is the future of the law, because that's what they do in England. It's not what they do here. Because in England, you have a king, and that king is the one that makes the laws, and he grants his agents the permission to be able to act under his authority. And so, yeah, when a judge makes a ruling, he can call it law because he speaks for the king. Therefore, case law is valid in England. It's not valid here because judges don't create law here. They create rulings here. And rulings must be consistent with the law because judges are tethered to positive law because we, the people, are the king, and we, the people, did not grant the judges the ability to make law because of the separation of powers that exist. We hermetically sealed the three branches of government, and we said, no, the people are the only ones that can create law. That's what we delegated that authority to us, not to them. They have no authority to create law. And yet here we are. Here we are with millions and millions of cases. You guys, if you were to walk into a courtroom and say that your rights have been violated, where does that judge go to determine whether or not your rights have been violated? Does he go to the Constitution, the source of your rights, or does he go to a judge-made ruling? Well, he obviously goes to a judge-made ruling. So he goes to the flawed decision of the man that comes before him, or the flawed decision of the man that comes before him. Okay. And that's where they determine whether or not your rights have been violated. They don't go to the source of the rights. They don't go to the Constitution. That's where they're supposed to go. And so we can see that where they make the determination is based upon judge-made rulings, meaning that the judge-made rulings are the foundation, not the Constitution. And so this whole issue derives from the Supreme Court of the United States. The Supreme Court's going to have to, they're going to have to live up to this. Right? They're going to have to live up to what their institution did, what their despicable predecessors that we have to call honorable every day. They're going to have to live up to this because they're the cause of this problem. Because the Marshall Court said, oh, we create law, right? We create law. And so, in 1833 in Barron versus Baltimore, when they said that the Bill of Rights doesn't apply to states, applies only to the federal government, as of that moment, all those rights that we thought we had, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of press, all those rights that we thought we had, we didn't, because the Supreme Court of the United States decided that they didn't want to give those to people. Well, who are they to make that decision, right? You see, the Supreme Court can't determine something. They can't determine the Constitution unconstitutional because there's nothing to compare that to. They can determine other laws unconstitutional when compared to the Constitution, but they can't deem the Constitution unconstitutional, nor can they change it or amend it, because the amendment can only come in accordance with the special amendment procedure and the specific guidelines or requirements for amending the law that you would find in that article. So when the Constitution says that no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury, that's clear. All of the states all must ensure that they have an indictment by grand jury in the adjudication of a capital or infamous crime. That's simple. The states gave up their sovereignty to subject themselves to the supremacy of the United States Constitution when they joined the Union, and as a result, that requirement exists. That's an obligation of government. So in 1885, I think it was, when California says, well, you know what, we really don't like indictments because we can't arrest arbitrarily, or our agents can't come and bring the accusation. We don't like the indictment. So we're going to create a ruling in our Constitution, the California state laws. We're going to create our own legislation. We're going to substitute it for Clause 1, Amendment 5. And we're going to say that our prosecutors can charge by information, not by indictment, even though the Constitution of the United States says that you must have indictment. Now, that was California fundamentally changing the Constitution of the United States through a state legislative act. And that's not valid because states do not have the authority to be able to create their own laws and then substitute them for the guarantees of the Constitution. They can't do that. And so when the state of California did do that, the responsibility of the Supreme Court would be to say, oh, that's unconstitutional. state, California, you don't get to do that. If you want to do that, then you need to present that to the people. You need to get the people to amend it in accordance with the procedures, the processes codified in the Constitution. Any other way would be an act of sedition, because sedition is defined as the speaking or writing of words such as law established in order to cause disaffection to the Constitution, to procure its alteration in other than lawful manner. If you amend the Constitution in any manner other than what is prescribed by the special amendment procedure, that would be an act of sedition done by traitors to the nation. So we don't live in the United States of California or the United States of Washington, right? Or the United States of Texas. We live in the United States of America. And so we must follow those American laws. And Texas or California is bound to do it. But likewise, the Supreme Court, their obligation is to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So when they step up and they say, you know what, I'm going to permit California to have their inferior provision that functions directly, we're going to support the state constitution. Then what happened was that the Supreme Court took their ruling in Hurtado versus California, and they removed Clause 1 of Amendment 5 to the Constitution that says that you must have an indictment by grand jury before arresting someone, holding them over for a capital crime. They removed that, and they put into place their ruling that says, oh, states, you can use information. You don't have to have an indictment anymore. So the Supreme Court of the United States amended the Constitution in 1887 because they sided with the state constitution. And as a result, they removed the provision that protects all of the people, right? The one thing that's in place to protect the innocent from hasty or malicious charges, the one thing that makes sure that innocence doesn't suffer here in America, they removed it. And they put into place their ruling and said, that's now the law. That's the law. That is the law. Well, once again, Supreme Court, you don't get to create law. Judges don't get to create law. And you can't side with a state constitution and support, defend, and preserve the Constitution of the United States. Your court is impeached. Wait, you're all impeached. You're all a bunch of traitors. You're all impeached. The moment that you chose to side against the Constitution of the United States, which was the object to which your fidelity is bound, the moment you sided against it and you sided with the state constitution, you guys are impeached. You're done, because that's the crime of perjury. And you've already implicitly invited punishment in the form of perjury should you fail to fulfill your promise that you made in your oath of office. You know, Article 3 of the Constitution says that the judges, both of the United States and of the several states, shall maintain their office while in good behavior. And good behavior is defined as the avoidance of criminal behavior. So when a judge chooses, willfully or negligently, to engage in criminal behavior, they're no longer fit to continue in their office in accordance with the Constitution of the United States. They're no longer in good behavior, and they are thus discharged. That's why impeachment doesn't require a finding of facts. There's no trial. It's a per se offense. All I got to do is just show that they had an obligation, they breached their obligation, and thus they are now guilty of the crime because their willfulness and their knowledge derives from the promise that they make. If you make a promise to do something and you don't do it, then I don't have to prove that you intended to do it. All I got to do is just show that you promised that you would do it, and you didn't. And thus you're guilty, and you've already implicitly invited punishment should you fail to fulfill the promise. And by that impeachment, right, by that crime of perjury, and remember, perjury is a violation of public trust. So the moment that Waite and his court failed to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States, they have committed the crime of perjury, just simply by their breach of obligation. They were there to preserve the Constitution and to make sure that these states don't create laws that would abridge it, right? They're there to make sure that the people are guaranteed their fundamental rights, and they didn't do it. They sided with the business. They sided with California. They said, "Yeah, I like what California's doing over here because that's gonna bump our business up a little bit." But they don't have the authority to do that. So that's why I say that my big argument is that if, in the opinion of the people of the United States, any of the provisions or guarantees of the Constitution be in any particular way wrong, then let it be corrected by an amendment in the way in which the Constitution so designates. Until, if and when that time comes, every single person is entitled to every single right secured by and enumerated in the Constitution, regardless of where they choose to reside within the jurisdictional United States. So, the state of California, just like any other democracy, because remember, democracies are all about the majority imposing their will upon the rest of the country, and the rest of the country saying, "Fuck, I don't want to do what they're doing. Why would we want to do what California's doing?" Right? I mean, California's got its problems, man. I don't want to agree with what's coming out of Los Angeles and Hollywood and rest of that, but they have a massive amount of population. 40 million people live in California. So when you consider a nation of 330 million people and 40 million people are coming from one state, then yeah, then in a democracy, then they would be able to impose their will upon the rest of the nation just because of the sheer numbers that they have. 40 million people, the majority population, they can create a law and then they'll impose it upon the rest of the nation. We're not a democracy. We're never meant to be a democracy. We were a constitutional-based federal republic, which created emphasis on each of the regional governments. See, our founders, they knew that a democracy would never work here because we had a highly geographically diverse and demographically diverse nation. We knew that we had a lot of different people that were coming into our country. We knew that we were going to have a lot of different territories in our country, and we knew that different areas were not going to share the same cultural or ethical values. Right? North Carolina is not going to share the same values as New Mexico. Right? Alaska is not going to share the same values as Massachusetts. We knew that. And so we knew that the only way that we could preserve this nation would be to ensure that we have equal representation in the central government from each of the regional governments. We have 50 regional governments, right? And these 50 regional governments have equal representation in the central government so that Massachusetts has a say, so that Rhode Island has a say. Rhode Island is the smallest state with the smallest population, but yet they have equal say in the central government, equal to California, equal to New York, because we appreciated and we valued the people and what the people needed and wanted, right? So we wanted to make sure that each of the regional governments were represented in the central government so that they had a voice and so that they were being heard, because if they weren't being heard and they were just being bulldozed over by California or New York, then they would start to pull away, because that's what happens with democracy. Democracies start to break down and fracture because each of the regional governments are not being heard, and as they're not being heard, then they say, you know what, I'm not going to participate in the central government anymore. It's not doing me any good. I'm just going to go and be by myself, because I'm not going to do what they're telling me to do, because I'm not going to do what California's telling me to do. This was the danger. I mean, our founders knew this. They knew that this would happen, and it would lead to the complete dissolution, breakdown, fracturing of the nation. You see, these senators and these congressmen, they've got to understand, they aren't there because of a party, a political party. They're not there because of Democrats or Republicans. They're there to represent the people and the people's needs, right? And their cultural values, right? That's what they're there for. Has nothing to do with fucking politics. They're there to represent the people. And if their people need something, then they are there to present that to the central government. If they have a good idea, right? Maybe Rhode Island has the best education system in the whole world, right? But if they're too small to be heard, then their idea will never be able to come out. They'll never be able to share their idea with the rest of the nation, because the rest of the nation will just say, "Oh, well, that's just Rhode Island. They don't have representation in the government." That's why we had all of these regional governments have equal representation in the central government, with two senators and a congressman, and they would come and they would present the ideas and the values and everything else. And that way, the people, were not being isolated. They were not saying, well, you know what, fuck central government, fuck, you know, but we've seen a shift into the democracy, away from the republic that we were meant to be, away from the representative government, where we have all of the regional governments all having equal say, equal participation, so that we have peace and harmony across the nation. We see that breaking down because of the two-party system. Two-party system has shifted us back into democracy, because what's happening now is that with the two-party system, we have two political parties, right? And lots of times the Speaker of the House is going to be, coming from one of the more populated states, such as Nancy Pelosi in California. Well, if she's the leader of the party, but she's coming from that state, then she has the ability to say to all of the other Democrats that, hey, you either fall in line with me or you're not going to get reelected to anything, right? So they had to fall in line with whatever she wanted anyway, which meant that the representation at each one of these regional governments was not, it didn't exist, because they just had to fall in line. It's Republican or it's Democrat, nothing in between. We don't care about what North Carolina wants as long as it's Republican or Democrat, right? We don't care about what Texas wants as long as it's Democrat or Republican. right? So we only have two options. We don't have 50 regional governments coming together to present the ideas and the needs of their people. We instead have two systems, and you either go this way or you go that way. And if you go any other way, then you will not be here anymore, because we're going to make sure that you don't get reelected. So the democracy is based upon two parties, two sides, and it creates a pendulum that swings. So as the pendulum swings one way, it creates hostility and conflict with the other, right? And as it creates hostility and conflict from the other, that's the minority now. And so now the majority then oppresses the minority for the period of time that they're in power. And then what happens is we have another shift. Now the minority, they come up and they become majority. And then the pendulum swings the other way. And now they oppress the minority, right? And you have a continuing fracturing breakdown, and these people all get pissed off now. And it lasts as long as they're in power. And then all of a sudden the pendulum swings the other way. And what happens is that all of this middle ground, all these people that were previously working together to try to create harmony and fairness across the nation, they're being picked up and sent to one side or the other because of the conflict. When a majority comes in, all that they do is they talk shit about the minority and they oppress the minority. And guys, I mean, unfortunately, that's what we're seeing even right now. You know, I mean, I know, I, I know that Mr. Trump's got good ideas, guys, but it is still the swinging of the pendulum. We simply traded one tyrant for another, and I need. I'm gonna be honest about that. I don't care if you guys are pissed off, if you guys don't like that, but all we did was we just swung the pendulum the other way. There's nothing changed other than now we're oppressing the oppressed once again. That's all it is. It's just a swinging the other way. We just traded one tyrant for another, and now we're going the opposite direction, which is going to continue to create hostility and conflict and division of the nation. And that's not going to bring the nation back together. That's not going to save us. And that's why I've been so concerned about the future of this country, is because I've seen this happening. I see this destruction, and I don't want this to happen. But in order for us to come back together, we've got to come back down to the middle ground. We got to step down back down to the middle ground, and we have to say, you know what, Democrats or liberals or whatever you want to, whatever it is, we need to bring you back to the middle, right? We need to bring you back to the middle, and we need to start hearing what you got to say, right? Because we're not going to swing across. We're going to come back to middle ground. And we're going to say, you guys got good ideas. You guys are half of our society. We need to bring you back in, because the only way that we're going to make up the ground that has been separated, right, from the swing, the only way we're going to do it is by someone just saying, you know what, I may not like some of the things they say, but if I want to step up and preserve this country, then I'm going to come back to middle ground, and I'm going to listen to what they got to say, and I'm going to bring them over, right? Because that is half of our country. And that half of the country is going to have pendulum swing in their direction in a couple of years, and it's just going to cause more hostility. When we trade one tyrant for another, right? All that we see is the majority that was previously in place is now the minority, and now they are in a situation where they're not being heard, and now they're pissed off, and they just go the other direction. And so we need to respect, all points of view here, and we need to remember that, what makes America great is our ability to debate on issues. We haven't debated on issues in years. I mean, the last debaters. I mean, John Kennedy was a debater, but he wasn't even a real debater. Where are the orators? Where are the people that come together and present ideas instead of just this person's a piece of shit and this person's an idiot? And I mean, our country needs dialogue, right? And we need dialogue to bring us back together. Because if we don't get the dialogue started once again, then I don't think that we're going to make it 4 more years. I think that you all can agree that we are on the precipice of destruction right now, because we've got states that are already talking about, oh, I'm not gonna be a part of it. We've already got states that are outright acting defiantly against the Constitution of the United States. And again, that's the only thing that makes America America. So if these states are refusing to recognize and enforce the body laws that govern the nation, that create the nation, then we are seeing a breakdown and destruction of the nation. We're seeing it. And so, it's up to us to decide. I mean, do we want to Do we want to just disregard half of our society? Or do we want to come together and say, you know what, you guys got good ideas too. We got good ideas. You guys, some situations, liberal perspective is necessary. Some situations, conservative perspective is necessary. But what makes us great is our ability to be able to come together and say, you know what, what's the best solution? What's the best mix of the two? And the only way we can do that is by stopping the swinging of the pendulum. You know, we have to stop it. And so to say that we're going to go out and start just just arresting or or picking up all of the opposition, guys, that's what the Gestapo did, right? That's what the Germans did. They just came into office, and as soon as they got into office, they just put in a bunch of orders and they went and arrested all of their opposition and put them into prison because they're their opposition, right? That's what they did in Germany. This isn't Germany, guys. We live in America, and so there's some better ways to do the things that we're doing. Now, I also want to say that I've told you guys before that the writ of habeas corpus, that's what I used as the mechanism to have this case be heard. You guys know that. That was the mechanism, and it's the right mechanism. You know, people send me other things all the time, and I'm just going to tell you guys that I'm not asking for anybody's permission. I'm already done, right? I'm telling you guys what I've done because I've already done it. I knew what I was doing. And what I did was the right thing. You're not going to tell me that we need a prohibition. You're not going to tell me that we need a quo warranto. No, I'm not asking for permission. Those are critics and cynics, and I don't need critics and cynics because critics and cynics could have went out and done it themselves if they wanted to, but they didn't. I did. So I know what was done. I know why I did it, and it's the right thing to have done. But the writ habeas corpus the Constitution says that the privilege of habeas corpus shall not be suspended except for in cases of actual rebellion, which means that you can suspend the writ of habeas corpus, right? You can. Now, now the problem there is that is the only play that they have. They can't win against this. They can't win this case. They know it. That's why they're crickets on. That's why they're silent on it. But if they can get the country into a state of rebellion or perceived rebellion, then they could suspend the privilege of habeas corpus and make this go away. That's the only play that they got. Guys, this case was supposed to be heard last June. Before the court went into summer recess, it was supposed to be heard. And then they went back and backtracked on that right before the Chevron case. So they backtracked and they said, "Oh, we're not going to hear this until after the election." And so then what happened was that Chevron came out, and Chevron, again, you guys know what Chevron is about. Chevron was the right decision, but Chevron was more about posturing of the branches of government and the judicial branch saying we're gonna have to hear this, but we're gonna place the blame and liability onto the executive, and we're gonna place them as the ones at fault for this issue when we actually hear it, because it's the prosecutors that are choosing the incorrect charging instrument. They work for the executive branch. So when the judicial branch says to the executive branch, you don't get a create law, what they're doing is they're saying, we're no longer going to permit you to bring us the incorrect charging instrument. And thus we're notifying you of our intent to no longer participate, mitigating our culpability in the criminal conspiracy. And that was what they were trying to do at a very, very high level, guys, a very high level. They were trying to keep their judges from being held liable for this once it comes out. So that was Chevron. And then they said, you know what, we're not going to hear your case until after the election. So then you have Chevron. It comes out June 28th. Executive branch, you don't get to create law. That was what that was. Executive branch, you don't get to create law. But then the very next week, they come out with another case, another ruling, and it said, executive officer, Mr. Trump, you can do whatever you want to do. And you see, those two rulings are in direct opposition with one another. One week they say executive branch, you don't get to do whatever you want to do, but the very next week they say executive officer, you get to do whatever you want to do. No one's asking the question as to why those are in opposition. No one's asked. There is a deceptive intent behind that because they're completely different rulings, right? If the executive officer can do whatever he wants, then why would the executive branch not be able to do whatever it wants? Because the executive officer would grant immunity onto all of his agents, right? So you guys have to understand that there are things that are going on behind the scenes, posturing, jockeying to try to get them into the best position to be able to overcome this or avoid this. And you guys got to ask some questions here. You guys have to ask questions. You guys got to look at it. You got to say, wait a second, what's going on behind the curtain here? Because lots of people just said, "Oh, thank God, Trump is immune, wonderful," but you didn't ask the question. You didn't ask the question, why is he immune? And why is his immunity in direct opposition with what they said the week before? So when that happened, when the Trump immunity ruling came out, that's when I was actually in DC and I panicked. The spirit inside of me said, "Oh shit, this is not good," because they just told me that they're not going to hear my case until after the election. And so I got out of town. I jumped on my motorcycle and with whatever I could grab as quickly as I could, and I got out of town because I knew that there was something that was going on between the court and the executive branch, and I knew it because because that was the point of the immunity. It was a quid pro quo, and so I got out of town. I went down to South Carolina. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I got down to South Carolina, and it was less than a week later. I'm on my back with my forks cut on my motorcycle on the interstate after crashing, and my motorcycle forks, they just snapped. And fortunately, crashing at 60 miles an hour on a motorcycle, smashing head first into a car, and then going shoulder, and then tumbling 6 or 7 times, and then sliding across the 4 lanes of highway. I walked away with a scratch on my finger. That's all I got. I was sore for a couple of days, but I got a scratch on my finger, and that was an attempt on my life. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we have pictures, we have the forks. It was cut, and we don't. I mean, I don't know if it was cut before I left DC. I don't know if it was cut while I was in South Carolina. That doesn't matter. I mean, the work that I used to do when I was in intelligence, that's a 30-second job. You're not going to cut all the way through the forks anyway. You're going to cut it down just enough so that at some point in time, when they're flexing and bending on the road, they're going to crash, and then no one's going to ask any questions because it's just some dumb motorcycler that just died. And these police officers aren't smart enough and intelligent enough to be able to investigate. So the number one way that the agency assassinates is automobile accidents. I mean, I know that. And um, but that was the day before Trump's attempted assassination in Pennsylvania. I'm on my back on an interstate in South Carolina. Nobody knows about me because I'm nobody, right? But you guys have to understand what I'm doing has risen to that level. I mean, this is that big, right? It's that big of a deal. So my concern was that why why was that ruling put into place? Why was the court telling me that they would hear it before June, and then all of a sudden now they won't hear it until after the election? And then you see, like the immunity case and all these other things come out. These didn't add up to me. They didn't make sense. And so I still don't have any evidence on it, and I'm going to have to wait before I start drawing conclusions. But 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 why are we not talking about this issue? Why is it that I brought this issue forward? This is a big deal, you guys. Like even if even if we did it for no reason other than because we know that there's innocent people in prison, we know it. Even the system says 15% of people in prison are innocent, but that's acceptable deviance. You know, why are we not talking about the fact that the one thing that keeps the innocent from suffering in prison, the one thing that protects them, has been removed, and thus the reason why innocence is suffering? Why aren't we talking about that? Well, I mean, why is it just being completely ignored? Something is so obvious, right? The only thing that protects the innocent from hasty or malicious charges from an overzealous prosecutor or lawyer, right? The only thing that protects them is that grand jury. That's well known, well known. And yet they removed it. And then we see innocent suffering all across America in every single state. And then we have the system itself that says right in the criminal procedure manual that 15% of people in prison are innocent, but that's an acceptable deviance because our system isn't perfect. Why aren't we talking about the fact that this needs to be in place so that innocence doesn't suffer here? Why aren't we talking about that? Could it be because this is just business to them? Could it be because this is too big of a deal and they don't want? Could it be because they don't want to admit it? You know, I mean, what is it? That's what we need to get to the bottom of, guys, because this is worthy of being talked about. This is absolutely worthy of being talked about. There's only four things that are required in the due process of law, and the first is not being followed. The bill of indictment. You are not being billed before you're being charged. The bill. You bill, and then you charge, and then you accrue the debt, and then you pay the debt. Just the 4 steps. 4 steps to due process. Bill, charge, accrue, pay your debt. And yet there's no bill. No bill. So all these people that are sitting in prison on charges and debt owed to society, they never got billed for that debt because there is no aggrieved party. Because the state can't be the aggrieved party. State can't keep the debt. It has through its executive or judicial officer. This is worthy of being talked about, you guys. And we should really be asking the question, why are they not talking about it? Why is no senator talking about it? Why is no congressman talking about it? Why is no judge talking about it? Why is no attorney talking about it? I went out to court just the other day here in Garvin County, and and we talked with an attorney there. Attorney, he'd probably been practicing law for maybe 30 years or something, and I was explaining to him the situation. Right, Oklahoma's got a provision in its constitution that functions directly to the contrary of the Constitution. Right, and he said, "Oh yeah, I get that, yeah." But he said he basically told me, show me something that says that he has to follow that. Show him something that says he has to follow the Constitution. And I mean, I was nice enough to tell him what the Constitution says, but now he's going to walk into a courtroom, despite the fact that I just asked him to stay this. Don't take any more action. Tell that judge to stop until we get this addressed. Because otherwise, you are walking in that courtroom and you are permitting that judge to act unconstitutionally in violation of Constitution, and that's misprision treason. You are covering up someone else's treason. At a minimum, it's misprision of felony, but regardless, it's misprision because you know about it and you acknowledged it, and you're permitting it to continue because you want some proof. Your proof comes from your oath. Your proof comes from your promise. Your proof comes from the words of that Constitution. You don't need someone else to tell you to do something because your obligation is to do what it says. All of you public officials are that way. You don't need someone else to step up and tell you, oh, please tell me I'm doing the right thing, because you know what? You're a grown fucking man. You can make a right decision for yourself. You don't need someone else to tell you what to do it. And if you do, then you know what? Maybe you shouldn't be working. Maybe you should be in custody because maybe you need a guardian. You know, if you need someone to fucking spoon feed you and tell you, you know, what you should do when you made a promise to do something and you're not doing it. So so, but he said a couple of things to me also. One thing he said, this attorney, was he said, well, if you're right, then that would mean that all of these convictions are all void. Yeah, yeah, I know. This is a big deal. Like that's what that would mean. You're right. Because if the state is not following the Constitution, then what the state's producing is unconstitutional. And again, it doesn't matter how long they've done it or how many times it's been done. Unconstitutional is unconstitutional. It can never be right. Wrong will always produce a wrong outcome. Only right can produce the right outcome. If you're not doing the right thing, what you're producing is wrong. And so, for him to say that, yeah, you're right. You're right. If I am right, because the Constitution says it, and you can acknowledge it, you can say I'm right, then that means that all of these convictions are all void. And guys, right there, that is the problem that we are having. Because think about this: that attorney, it snapped in his head, and he said, "Huh, that would mean that my whole career is fucking a lie. Everything I've done, my whole entire 30, nothing. My whole life has been pointless." That's a difficult pill for these guys to swallow, right? You walk up to a judge and you say to a judge, "Hey, judge, you're doing things wrong." That judge is going to look at you and say, "Who the fuck are you to tell me I'm doing things wrong?" Right? Because he can't grasp the thought of actually doing something wrong. He can't do it because he's been trained to do it a certain way. And if you're trained to do it wrong, then you just continue doing it wrong unless you question and stand up and choose to do it right. But that's the problem that we're having. It's very difficult to get these people who thinks that they're so smart and so fucking amazing and whatever honorable to think that no, you never even knew the law. You guys are all criminals because that's what happens when you don't follow the law. That's a difficult pill to swallow, and that's why we're getting as much pushback as we're getting. Is that these guys are looking at us, looking at me, and saying, "Who are you to tell me I'm doing it wrong?" Well, I'm not. I'm only telling you what the law says. This is what the law says. Don't get mad at me. Get mad at the law because all I'm doing is just telling you what the law says. And if the law says that, and you guys are on this side of it, operating outside of it, then you can draw your own conclusion. But don't attack the speaker because the speaker, I'm just telling you what the law says. And if the law says that you will do it this way and you didn't do it, then I'm not a rocket scientist or anything, but I think that means that you broke the law. I'm pretty sure that you broke the law. And it doesn't matter if someone told you to break the law. It doesn't matter if someone trained you to break the law. You still broke the law. And if you break the law, it doesn't matter how long it's been broken, doesn't matter how many times it's been broken, it's still broken. So these states have trained their administrative officers to act whatever way the states see fit, because the states have decided that they can create their own legislation under what they call states' rights, which is an oxymoron. There is no states' rights. States don't have rights. People have rights. States have powers. So to say the states have rights would be, it doesn't even make sense. It's ridiculous. But that's what they say. States' rights. States don't have rights. People have rights. Those rights are preserved through the limiting of the powers, either federal or state, because you limit the powers of government so that you can preserve the individual rights of people. So states don't have rights. But when a state does create a law that abridges a federal constitutional right, that's not a state issue. That's a federal issue. That federal constitution resides outside of the state's limited or statutory government limits. So when a state does create a law that infringes or goes outside of its limited or statutory government limits, that's a federal issue. It's not a state issue. Federal issue, because now it's a state that's acting outside of their lawful authority and infringing and amending laws that they're outside of their control. If you want to change the federal laws, you have to do that through the federal legislation. Any other way would be unlawful, unconstitutional. It'd be a state imposing its will upon the rest of the nation. And just as Thomas Jefferson said, federalism is not one state or small factions of states imposing their will upon the rest of the nation, but instead acting as an aggregate and an essential buffer between the central government and the citizens. The state's role was not to create their own independent legislation so they can be sovereign and autonomous and treat their people however they see fit. Their role was to be a buffer between the central government and the people. Their role was to protect the people, and they need to remember what their role was in our constitution-based federal republic, because they've forgotten that. So, guys, I'm gonna need to go here, but I just want to come out and talk to you guys just a little bit tonight. I had some stuff that I just want to say. So tomorrow I'm going to try to make my way down into Texas. You guys know the plan. You guys have contacts with Telemundo. You guys have contacts with Al Jazeera. You guys have contacts with Univision. I need your contacts now. What we're doing is we're trying to leverage those adversarial news agencies to try to get this covered. Okay. This has got to get covered. It's got to get covered for my safety, for the integrity, and to advance this because they've ignored it. And now that we're in a new administration, they're not going to acknowledge it unless they have to. They're not going to acknowledge it. They have had the information for months and they've chosen to not talk about it, which means that their intent is to just pretend like nothing is going on. All of the stuff that I did, the serving of the Supreme Courts, the serving of the train, they're just going to let it all blow away and pretend like it was, and just go about the business. Just as Mr. Mark Wayne, the senator of Oklahoma here, and Mr. Britt, the senator of Michigan, just like they said, oh, this is low on the totem pole because we have more important things to do, like finances and budget. Finances and budget are way more important than preserving the fundamental rights of the constituents of the senators. That's what they said. We have the audio, we have the video. I made the show or the video. You guys can watch it here on TikTok. So that's how they value. That's how they value. So live is ending in 4 minutes anyway. They say that there's apparently they didn't like something I just said, so so it has to close in 5 minutes. All right, that's good. So these senators, what I have to say to Mr. Mark Wayne, Miss Marie, Miss Cantwell, Mr. Booker, Mr. Graham, what I have to say to them is that if you guys don't step up and make the states obey the Constitution of the United States of America, then there is no longer a Congress of the United States of America. Because the only reason why you exist is because of the Constitution of the United States of America. So if you don't have the fortitude or the courage to step up and assert the supremacy of the supreme law of land and make the states adhere to it, then there is no longer a constitution. If there isn't, then there's no longer DC. There's no longer a Congress. There's no longer a Supreme Court. There's no longer a president. There's not. We don't need any of it. Just go away. We're just going to tear down this 10 square miles, and we'll just, I don't know, give it over to the homeless. But if you guys don't preserve the Constitution, if you don't do that, then you don't have a job anymore. You don't have a position anymore, and you have no power because you will have surrendered your power to the state. And if you surrender your power to the state, then guess what? Constitution's gone, the union's gone, and so is your position. So is your supposed authority. You're nothing. And so that's why each one of these branches of government, whether it's the judicial, whether it's the legislative, or you guys had better step up and you better preserve the Constitution of the United States. Because if you don't, then you know what? The people are not going to pay $600 billion a year for you guys to do nothing and allow these states to do whatever they want to do. Because you guys aren't strong enough or courageous enough or, honorable enough to actually preserve the nation and protect the people from states that are infringing on the fundamental rights of the people. That should be the high priority, not budgets and finances, Mr. Mark Wayne. At least in my opinion. If I were serving the people in your position, I would be concerned about the fundamental rights of your constituents. I wouldn't be concerned about budget. Fuck the budget. I would be concerned about what the states are doing to harm your constituents. But that's just me, guys. Thank you guys so much. We'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow in the morning. I have a live that I'm doing first thing in the morning. It is law talk, I believe it is. So we start that at 8 in the morning. I have another one in the afternoon. I just did Gloves Off with Professor Butran this afternoon. You guys can find that on YouTube and here on TikTok as well. I think it was pretty good. Maybe not as good as my first one with him, but it was another good one. It was a good follow-up. So guys, if you can go out, listen to it. I'm going to try to break it up as well and get some of the shorts out. But tomorrow morning again, I'll be with Law Talk. And then tomorrow afternoon, I'm with KJM, KJM And then on Friday morning, I am with Allegheny County Corruption on YouTube. So we've got 3 podcasts coming up. And then I believe I have another one, Libel Liberator, I think it was. And I think that's coming up on Saturday. Saturday. Okay, guys. So um, what we're doing right now, we got to get heard. Okay. So, the more I can talk to people, the more we never know who needs to hear the words that I have to say, guys. We never know because this is about to take off. And the moment it does, it's done. So that's why I'm going to head down to Texas. We're going to knock on these doors of Telemundo. We're going to knock on these doors of Univision. We're going to knock on these doors of Al Jazeera. We're going to knock on the doors, and we're going to try to get in touch with these producers, and we're going to try to get their attention, tell them about the situation that's oppressing the Hispanics across the southern states, and see if that's going to be enough with the perfect storm to actually get them to run this story. Because we can get them to run the story, then you know what? The whole nation's going to end up running it. But we got to get the first news agency to do it, and we're going to try to leverage an adversarial news agency. So if you guys have contacts in Univision, in Telemundo, in Al Jazeera, if you want to get me those contacts or introduction, I need it. Okay, I need it because I don't have contacts, but you guys do. So I'll be between Dallas, Houston, Austin, and San Antonio over the next week. Okay. So I hope to see all of you out there in the field. If you guys can, please donate. Please donate. I hate to be a broken record, but I can't do this work without your help. I can't do it without your help. I don't get paid. So I need your help to be able to finish this work. My hope is that I will be able to self-finance this soon. The moment that the news takes off with this, they're going to pay me. And when they pay me, I will not have to ask you guys for any more money. I always had the intent to be able to self-finance at some point in time. You guys have paid enough, your families have paid enough. But until we reach that point, I need you guys to help me because I can't do it on my own. Can't. Okay. So you guys can donate through the website. All right. You guys can donate directly, Cash App, Chime, Venmo, PayPal. Don't donate to anybody else, guys. I hate to see the money going to some piece of shit that's out here, just trying to be an opportunist and take advantage of all of you and your hope and actually damaging, actually damaging your hope um, because you guys have hope. You guys see that there's something that's real here. There you see there's a potential here, and then you have some asshole that comes in and says, "Oh yeah, give me some money," and then they wind up burning you. And I get it, man. I get it, but don't lose hope. Okay, don't lose hope. Don't lose hope in this because you guys, look I'm out here and I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. I'm doing this for free. I'm doing things in states that has nothing to do with. I won't get anything out of it. I'm not going to get my kids back. I'm not getting my life back, my wife back, my property. I'm not going to get anything back, guys. If I weren't doing this, right, because I'm not getting paid either. If I didn't know that I could do this, right, if I hadn't already weighed the risk, I would not be out here doing these things every day. I wouldn't. I'd be out living a normal life, being a normal human being. But I put everything on hold because I know that I can do this, and because I know that we can do this. And it's been built. I did it. I did it in a silo. I did it before anybody. But now we're at a point where the only thing left now is we need the country to hear about what we've done. We need the country to hear about the crimes that have been committed by these agents that they're trying their best to keep from being heard. Because once we show the criminality of our government to all the people are going to get on our side. They're not going to be on their side because they're not going to get behind traitors. They're going to get behind the people and they're going to back us. And we're going to see a complete shift over of the power, massive shift of power. But they have to hear it. If they don't hear it, then they're going to continue to buy the Kool-Aid that is being fed by them on that side. They're going to continue to think that what is good is actually good, when in all reality, they're killing people to absolute impunity and then blaming, the law for their incompetence. All right. Thank you guys so much. God bless. Have a great rest of your night. Okay. Thank you.